Guys, we've got some major updates regarding conference realignment, including a crazy rumor, the Big 12 possibly contacting a Big 10 team. We've also got the Pac-12 in the news, talking about their media deal. They're currently negotiating. We've got an update on that. And then we've also got a very interesting scenario when it comes to fixing college football bowl season that I want to get to. But first, conference realignment rumors. This came out yesterday. Big 12 reportedly trying to lure a Big 10 program. And it says the Big 12 is searching for adding new programs. And apparently they are, of course we know they're open for business. Now there's a report the Big 12 is looking to poach a Big 10 program. And this report is coming from the St. Paul Pioneer Press. The Big 12 is said to be quietly seeking the Minnesota Golden Gophers, but Minnesota can't afford the revenue loss of a new Big 10 network deal, which, with the expansion of USC and UCLA in 2 years, could be worth it's actually going to be over $100 million. That's the expectation. We've got a Minnesota reporter noting that the move would make absolutely no sense. So, honestly, I don't know what to make of this rumor. The Big 12 would need to understand they're completely wasting their time contacting any Big 10 program. It would not make an iota of sense for any single Big 10 team right now to leave the conference and join the Big 12 in terms of revenue, in terms of exposure, and things like that. We know college football is mainly based on that. That's why you've got all these crazy realignment situations with USC, UCLA. Yesterday, of course, we noted it's mainly due to the TV networks wanting more money. They're the ones really behind all these moves. But this rumor, I don't know if it's fake. I mean, you would think the Big 12 would have the self-awareness to realize it's a waste of time, to be completely honest. There is no world, this day and age, no way, no situation where Minnesota would consider leaving the Big 10 for really any conference, let alone the Big 12. So this was just a report. I just wanted to throw it out there. You know, it is, I don't know if it's not true. I don't know what the Big 12 is doing here. Maybe it's a false report and it's someone within the Minnesota program trying to drum up their overall value. I've thought of what this is. I have no clue, to be completely honest. But obviously, Minnesota will be staying in the Big 10. And of course, we've got the major, possible news this week of the Big 12 adding 2 teams. The rumors of them being open for business are absolutely legitimate. And the 2 teams that I think are to watch right now, Arizona and Colorado, based off the intel I've received. I don't know if that intel is 100% accurate. We've been over it several times on the channel. The idea that Arizona, Colorado, possibly Arizona State, and Utah would be interested in jumping ship from the Pac-12 to the Big 12. And that segues us on to our next overall topic. College football realignment, latest intel on timeline for new Pac-12 media rights deal. Quote, none of the Pac-12 presidents or athletic directors expect a deal this week, which isn't a surprise. However, we've heard from sources the expectation is that a deal may not even come this year. Could change, but patience will be tested in a big way. So this is major news being reported right now. The Pac-12 going through a negotiation process for a month. There's a report that the deal might not even come this year, and teams are going to have to be patient. At the start of July, the Pac-12 released a statement announcing the start of its next round of media negotiations. Quote, put into plain English, Pac-12 schools want to understand how much money is on the table for them if the current conference continues to exist post USC UCLA. If the numbers are bad, they'll quickly try to find new landing spots. So guys, of course, we heard rumors, the overall offer from ESPN for all 3 tiers of media rights was around $25 million per school over the course of 12 years, which is not a good offer at all, especially for programs like Oregon and Washington. And then this is the Pac-12 commissioner talking about potential expansion. He says in a quote, "No, 10 is viable, but I think the preference is to take a serious look at expansion, and if the right candidates are out there, expand. I think when you get to 16, certainly beyond 16, it becomes very, very difficult to do conference scheduling and manage the conference in all sports. You have football teams that are going to go years without playing each other. That's, of course, in reference to the mega conferences. I don't think the Pac-12 has to worry about a 20-team conference at all. If the Pac-12 somehow got a 20-team conference, it would mainly be an extension of the Mountain West. And when it comes to the Pac-12 possibly expanding back to 12 teams, if they're able to hold on to the 10 they currently have, the thought is San Diego State and maybe Fresno State as two possible teams. Maybe Boise State, although that's one that doesn't really bring a ton of value in terms of overall revenue, in terms of things like that. It's more San Diego State and Fresno State. So we will see. He's kind of talking out of both sides of his mouth. He says 10 is viable, but then he says we'll take a serious look at expansion if it presents itself. You would have to think 10 teams in a conference at this point, with the Big Ten already up to 16, with the SEC already up to 16, you have to get more than 10. If you're the Pac-12 and you want to stay somewhat relevant, if you're able to keep all of your members and you're trying to stay relevant, you're going to have to at least add two probable Mountain West schools to the list. Maybe a team like SMU. I know they've also been rumored. I'm just saying what's being rumored right now, those possible teams. And then, of course, the situation with again, guys, if the rumors are true that it's around $25 million per year in their new TV deal, Oregon and Washington, they're not going to be interested in something like that. And it would have to be a media deal that would have no exit fee and would allow for Oregon and Washington to get out of it at any point. Otherwise, they will not accept it. I think that's why you're seeing the reports saying this negotiation might not even end this year, because you've got disgruntled teams, and it's not even just Washington and Oregon. We've heard California and Stanford as well looking around at other conferences, the Big Ten, the Big 12, and, you know, in the event that Oregon and Washington have to stay in the Pac-12 for the next few years, there's going to have to be a no exit fee if there is a negotiation. You're not going to want to be hemmed in to a major 12-year contract. So, guys, that is the latest on the realignment saga. We've got the Pac-12 in negotiations right now. We've also got the kind of the weird situation with Minnesota, just some sort of fake rumor. I mean, we've had so many fake rumors, guys. I still remember that rumor from like a swimming site or whatever saying FSU and Clemson were joining the SEC. I mean, the fake rumors are just so ridiculous at this point. It is totally off the rails, and that is just another complete fake. It makes no sense why the Big 12 would even try and lure Minnesota. You have to have the self-awareness to understand Minnesota financially. I mean, my God, you're going to turn down basically 70, 80 million per year to take 50 million per year with the Big 12 just so maybe you're more competitive. Competitiveness doesn't matter anymore to any of these programs. All of these programs care. Like, you think Rutgers could go to the American and be more competitive, right? They could, but they're not going to. They're going to lose 70, 80 million dollars per year. So it makes no sense. And then I thought this was really interesting, just kind of an off-season thing. Bowl games to start the season, reimagining the college football calendar. So this article is really interesting, and it just comes down to the whole idea. Bowl games have become so obsolete. Now, personally, I think a lot of the bowl situation or the bowl issues get solved with an expanded playoff, preferably 12 teams, and then all the New Year's 6 games are meaningful. But this is kind of interesting. It says, most importantly, we'd be creating a 10-day college football extravaganza that would rival the opening weekend of the NCAA basketball tournament. It'll be wall-to-wall bowl action with no competition from the NFL. Who wouldn't be excited to see Tulane and Hawaii kick off at midnight on a Tuesday? Is that rhetorical? followed by a new bowl game in Dublin, Ireland, pitting Boston College against Northwestern at 8 a.m. on Wednesday. And don't worry, the most tradition-rich bowls, the current New Year's Six, will still get played at the season end as part of the expanded playoff. So, obviously, something has to be done about the bowl games. You've got kids sitting out left and right. They're saying move the bowl games to the start of the season. You know, I think it has to be explored. I really do. Again, the major bowl game situation and a lot of the issues with that are going to be solved with an expanded playoff to where all the New Year's Six games are going to have national title implications because they're all going to be first and second round matchups with an expanded 12 or 16 team playoffs. And remember, guys, the important date on a playoff expansion, we've got a meeting that's happening in mid-August between the College Football Playoff Committee, and they will be discussing, and there's a lot of motivation and a lot of momentum in favor of expanding the playoff as early as 2024, but definitely by 2025 as long as they can agree on the format. We remember back in February, the timeline, if we remember, you've got the Big Ten voting against an expansion. You've got the Pac-12 voting against an expansion. Both of their commissioners have come out this summer and now changed course. Now they're in favor of expansion. I haven't heard anything from the ACC, but that's 4 or 5 conferences now that would want an expansion. So the playoff is being expanded. That will mitigate a lot of the issues in terms of the New Year's Six bowl games being meaningful. But when it comes to all these other bowls and, you know, I agree they're not meaningful. We should do something, really kickstart college football. Put the bowl games possibly, or not even the bowl games, but do something week 1. If you have an expanded playoff, it allows teams to be more creative, be more loose with their scheduling, because now they're not concerned about losing one game and being left out of a 4-team playoff if the playoff expands to 12 teams or 16 teams. But I do like this idea of having week 1 be a spectacle where basically, I mean, Alabama's facing someone good, Ohio State's facing, like, we're not getting these games where it's Ohio State versus Bowling Green. You know, it's Alabama versus Utah State, things like that. We want the big games week 1, infuse life into the into college football overall because, you know, right now a lot of people leaving college football, they are very upset about the realignment and stuff like that, and I totally understand it. I've had issues with it, with the recruiting and stuff like that. It's tough to follow it with all the NIL stuff, but there are so many people right now that are just done with college football because the NIL stuff is out of control, because you've got teams in California joining the Big Ten. It gets ridiculous. There has to be a way to infuse some life back into college football, and the bowl games at the end of the season, you know, it's such a great tradition. I love it, but you know, I don't know if the bowl games need to be at the beginning of the season or we just need to have bigger matchups. I think the expanded playoff will also, you know, allow these teams to schedule tougher matchups, again, because they're not worried about losing one game. Michigan is the best example. Michigan always used to schedule really good home-and-home games, non-conference games. You know, they end up losing to Notre Dame the one year. They lose a few other games, and you take a look at their non-conference schedule this year, it's completely depressing. And the reason they do it is because they're worried if they lose to Ohio State or Penn State and they lose a non-conference game, they have zero chance of making the playoff. But if you expand the playoff to 12 teams or 16 teams, they would still be alive and kicking, and you'd see a lot of 2-loss teams and maybe even some 3-loss teams in the playoff. So there's a lot of positives to expanding the playoff, and that is something interesting, putting the bowl games, making them a spectacle at the beginning of the season with wall-to-wall coverage, March Madness style. That is something I would certainly be interested in if they kind of had like a mock schedule to see what would happen there between all the games and all the matchups. I think that'd be really cool. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.